I'm Ben Givarz with Dolby Laboratories on the Music Partnerships team here in Los Angeles. And in this community session, I am excited to welcome back Dolby's Emma Brooks to take us through the updates to the Dolby Atmos Room Design Tool version 6.2 and the new Dolby Certified Service Partner Program. So the Dolby Atmos Room Design Tool, aka the DARDT, is an interactive Excel spreadsheet which allows you to input the dimensions of your space, your speaker locations, and your speaker and amp details to help design and model a Dolby Atmos mix studio for music or post, gaming, or podcasting. So version 6.2 builds on version 6 and adds a design feedback section where design issues and suggested resolutions are listed. There's a new loudspeaker manufacturer filter, additional design and layout guides, and a speaker delay calculator in the commissionings tab. So Emma is going to get into that and also share a great new partner program for rooms, and that is the Dolby Certified Service Partner Program. Dolby Atmos certified service partners are companies that design, install, integrate, and provide support for Dolby Atmos mix studios. So Dolby Atmos specialists from this program are specifically trained to provide studio calibration and commissioning services. The program creates trusted partnerships between Dolby and key pro audio integrators to assist in design, integration, and commissioning of Dolby Atmos mix rooms. So we'll be joined by one of the certified service partner organizations involved in the program, and that is Guitar Center Professional. Technician Marcin Nowak and account manager Doug Battle will be here from their new Dolby Atmos Creation Studio in Hollywood to share how they use the DARDT to design rooms, how they draw on their manufacturer relationships to meet the needs of studios, and we'll have a sneak peek at their new Creation Studio in the flagship Hollywood Guitar Center store. Of course, Emma, Greg, Marcin, and Doug will answer your questions here live, so drop them into the questions function here in Big Marker, and be sure to add your name as well. As always, Greg Stryke Chin is here to share his pro mix tips. This time, he's focusing on tips for room calibration within the renderer, including saving your profile settings. And he also shares tips for managing your software licenses in iLok and bouncing between a hardware iLok and the iLok license manager in the cloud. So great stuff, great pro tips as always with Greg. Stay tuned for that. And right before we jump in, I'm also excited to share a short conversation I had with Mark Gallo about his Dolby Atmos 2024 Presents series on YouTube, which features Dolby Atmos engineers from around the community. So Mark has featured a few of our friends such as Brad Wood, Ryan Uliate, Natalia Schlesinger, Carolyn Malachi, and more. And he's ramping up now for a new season. He's going to share with us a bit about the background and inspiration around his series and how you can get involved. So that's coming right up after a quick reminder that in last month's music community session, Dolby's Jordan Glasgow was here to share the new features of the Dolby Atmos Renderer version 5.3, of course with Stereo Direct, and the Dolby Atmos Album Assembler version 1.4. So if you haven't yet, you can grab those at our pro site and the Avid Marketplace, downloads and installers for both of those programs. Plus, Greg shared part 2 of his pro tips for Album Assembler. Be sure to check out those sessions and all of our previous sessions going back several years at Dolby's YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe to those as well. Also, go ahead and zap the QR code on screen now to opt into the Dolby Creators mailing list to make sure you're up to date with the latest sessions, tools, updates, and events. All right, so stay tuned for Emma and Greg with GC Pros Marcin Nowak and Doug Battle from Hollywood right after a quick chat with Marc Gallo. All right, it's my pleasure to welcome to the community sessions Marc Gallo of Mind the Gap Recording School. He's based in Pennsylvania, but coming to us today from beautiful San Diego, California. Marc, great to see you, and thank you for doing this.
Good to see you, Ben.
So you're hosting a series of Dolby Atmos Presents music creation workshops, which are live streams from the Mix Room in Bluebell, Pennsylvania. And those have been going for a few months now, and we'll get into that. But can you share a little bit about yourself with our community here and your background in the industry and the community yourself?
I'm president of Mind the Gap, which does predominantly voiceovers, sound design, and soundtracks. As you've already referenced, I'm also host for Dolby Atmos 2024 Presents. We do a lot of independent filmmakers, and animators as well. Recently, as of the beginning of this year, when just through me working at studios and so on, some of them began to equip them with Dolby Atmos systems that I became familiar with. Totally awesome, but as of 2 years ago, I found completely impractical at the time, even, with the binaural experience. But as time went on, as the technology has evolved and strategies and so on, I've really come to greatly appreciate the technology and a lot of the creative work that's been done out there. And that's what inspired me to kind of start these monthly seminars featuring Grammy winners as well as award-winning producers, engineers, industry experts to discuss the craft of Dolby Atmos productions.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? I've heard similar stories from people who were somewhat hesitant a couple of years ago or several years ago. And then as they got into it, the tools became more accessible, more integrated into the workstations people were familiar with. The consumer device footprint just grew exponentially. The services and the ways that people can experience it continued to grow. And a lot of people like yourself who have a deep background in audio engineering and the music community and the music industry really found this as an exciting new way to kind of express themselves and sort of be invigorated in the community and the industry. So, obviously you're not there today because you're on a California adventure, but share a little bit about your setup there at the mix room in Bluebell.
Just so you know, with the mix room, we did our first 2 seminars there. Now we do it now at my studio. But speaking of the mix room, they have a 7.2.4 monitoring system, Genelec system and so on, SSL console. It's what you would call pretty much not exclusively a Atmos facility, but a hybrid facility. In fact, it's pretty impressive. They've got a Studer 24 track. So if you want to do a complete analog mix and then turn it into an Atmos mix, it's really nice to have those options and so on. So they are, David Ivory is the one that runs that facility. And it's also part of Montgomery County Community College, which is a whole recording school unto itself and so on. But I'm a big proponent that you've got to reference your headphone mixes with a monitoring system. And, it's nice. It's funny that you brought up about how the consumer side of Atmos is exploding and now into cars as well, is that for years, I'm one of many that would always test our mixes in our cars. And, the new car that we just got is Atmos equipped. So I can test it on my headphones, I can test it in my car, and I can test it in an Atmos facility. And that's really an ideal situation.
It really is. I mean, as of today, there are 15 automobile manufacturers announced or on the road today, just in the past couple of weeks. Rivian and Cadillac have both announced. So that's super exciting as well. And the car test is absolutely an essential way to check those mixes. So, you've mentioned that you've featured some award-winning mix engineers on your sessions. I've seen quite a few of our good friends on there, people like Natalia Schlesinger and Carolyn Makalai and Michael Romanowski, to name just a few. But share a little bit of the rundown of sort of what you've got going on there, what the goals are for your mix seminars, and how people can check them out.
Well, we can be easily found on YouTube at We Mind the Gap. There is where all our seminars and as well as our shorts, because obviously we focus on specific topics within those seminars and discussions, which make nice 4 or 5 minute shorts about a specific topic and so on. But the real drive behind these seminars is, believe it or not, is that I really hope to help the movement in democratizing the technology. And I'm going to get a little retro on you here, Ben, because I'm going way back into the 80s here, probably way before your time, but just really in short, and try to draw some of these parallels. I mean, one of the, when I was in my college band at Temple University in Philadelphia, the big thing that came out and changed everything was the 4-track cassette Tascam, and Fostex had one, recorder. where you could just sit there and you can do a mix, a multi-track mix. I mean, if you think about it, back then we were like, wow, this is like what the Beatles did. They were working with 4 tracks, and earlier in their career, even less, you know? So similarly, in regard to your technology, as I expressed to you earlier, like my skepticism about it when I was first getting introduced to it was the cost. It's like, who's going to afford a 7.14 monitoring system, let alone all the implied maintenance? But the binaural was a big factor in changing my opinion, as well as the ability to fold down these mixes. So, you know, yeah, you can do in your headphones a whole, you know, immersive mix and play it back, do a fold down to a 5.1, which is a readily available consumer format. So they're the kind of some of the things that we deal with in our seminars, is trying to introduce ways for people to make it work in their existing facilities, which many of them, believe it or not, are still a 2.1, you know, at best a 5.1. And then we even dig into more topics as well. But I'll stop there if you want to have a follow-up question, because you don't want me to digress too much.
Well, no, that was great. And I mean, a lot of the conversations we have on these community sessions are about, you know, flexible systems and how they can fit into or be a part of an existing studio. And, you know, to your point earlier about, you know, what may be thought of as a non-ideal configuration in a room can still be adapted to work for Dolby Atmos. I mean, if you've got low ceilings, maybe, you know, it's something that you put things on stands, or you look for different ways to like build a truss overhead to make those overheads work, or make an equidistant setup, or time align it if it can't be. And a lot of the conversations we do on these sessions is about hearing from the community and making recommendations on how this system can fit into your workflow. I talked a little bit earlier about, you know, native integration into the tool set, people, you know, creating some in headphones and referencing on speaker-based systems, some people creating in Atmos from the beginning on speaker-based systems or in headphones, and checking translation in various ways, exporting MP4s, listening to it back on a soundbar, on a in an automobile, on headphones, however that may be. And, you know, as the technology continues to evolve and become more accessible, what's great about these sessions and about the sessions that you're doing is it's about an exchange of ideas. You know, it's folks like you and the people that you're featuring that are on the forefront of harnessing this technology and putting the art into it and forging a new ground and bringing things forward and creating this new immersive world of music creation, harnessing Dolby Atmos music technology. And that's one of, you know, the most exciting things. I was around, going back to the Porta Studio days and the tape track days. No, thank you for the compliment, actually. And so it's been really exciting for me to actually see the progression of this technology. And I think one of the cool things, again, about what you're doing and what we do on this sessions is bringing people together to exchange these ideas and talk about what's working, find flexible ways to fit Dolby Atmos into their workflows, whatever their situation or their budget may be. And I think what's great is that also the, you know, manufacturing community, the speaker manufacturers, the DAW manufacturers, and interface manufacturers of the world are also progressing, of course, and they're finding
and
more
making
agile,
it more affordable.
More agile and affordable solutions.
Exactly.
And so we do a lot of work to talk about all of that.
I wanted to add one point, if I could, Ben, you know, during our seminars, you know, like, it's not tech geeky, like, let's get into like really deep, specifically into plugins and how you route an SSL console, because a lot of people don't have, you know, a 56 channel SSL console to kind of implement certain techniques. One of the things that we try to do is we try to introduce a philosophical approach.
Well, those are great topics. And thank you for all of the work you're doing out there in the world to bring people together and have these conversations, and also shine a spotlight onto the mix engineers of the world that are doing this work. You know, it's going to inspire the next generation. And like yourself, it could inspire established veteran mix engineers and producers to want to explore more and get into it. So thanks a lot, Mark, for all the great work you're doing there. And we will certainly continue to share it with our community and get the word out there for you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ben.
All right. Very happy to be joined, as always, on the community sessions by Dolby's Director of Creative Enablement on the Music Partnerships team, Greg Stryke Chin from his studio and spaceship in Miami, Florida. What's up, Greg?
How's it going, Ben? Great to be back, as always.
Great to have you, as always. And excited to welcome back Dolby's Emma Brooks to share her expertise, including some exciting new updates to the Dolby Atmos room design tool in version 6.2 and the new Dolby Certified Service Partner program. Emma, of course, oversees Dolby Atmos studio enablement in the field, and she's also a content and technical solutions engineer with Dolby based in beautiful Nashville, Tennessee. Emma, how are you? Welcome, and thanks for doing this.
I'm good. Thanks so much, Ben.
Awesome. So, Emma, you do so much fantastic work in the field to establish and evolve the Dolby Atmos mix room best practices and technical guidelines. And, of course, you work very closely with the creative community and our partners around the world to help enable rooms from a technical and support perspective. And one of the main tools you're using is the Dolby Atmos room design tool, also known as the DART, as I mentioned now in version 6.2. We've done a few community sessions together where you've touched on the DART, but if you'd maybe just begin with a bit of review of what the DART does for users who are designing rooms, and then we can go into the updates in 6.2.
Absolutely. Yeah, happy to do that. So I won't go through all of the features in the DART right now. We do have a really fantastic DART quick start series, as well as an in-depth DART and mix room design tutorial that's over an hour, and that's all available on professional support. But I will share kind of an overview of the newer features that I think are particularly impactful to the end user. So as a quick introduction, the DART, or the Dolby Atmos Room Design Tool, is an interactive Microsoft Excel tool built to assist the user in designing a Dolby Atmos studio. So the tool is going to use information like your working layout dimensions, your speaker models, and then it's going to calculate the ideal layout for your space. So it's a tool that I use all the time. I know our guests today use it a lot as well. Definitely excited to share some new features.
Great. And so, I mean, these tools and resources, they're really designed to help mixers achieve the best possible results with their configuration, right? I mean, this is accurately meant to help you design a room that you can rely on sonically and ensure you're best set up for your mixes to translate with intent to consumer devices. So can you share a little bit about technically how it works and what to look forward to?
Yeah, absolutely. So the DART is, like I said, an interactive Microsoft Excel file that runs on some complex macros. They're going to help you calculate not only where to put your speakers, but what the best models might be at each position. So now we've actually given you the ability as well to kind of filter manufacturers. And within your preferred manufacturer, because we know everyone has a preference, you can select different models and see what the SPL is going to look like at your mix position, how much headroom you have. And it's just going to help you get a really holistic look at what you're working with in terms of your room and what you might need to achieve your goals within the space. I won't go through every single feature in the tool right now, since we do have the DART Quick Start series, as well as the in-depth DART and room design training available on our professional support site. But I will go through the new features in version 6.2 that are particularly impactful to the end user. As a quick introduction, the Dolby Atmos Room Design Tool, also known as the DART, is an interactive Microsoft Excel tool built to assist the user in designing a Dolby Atmos mix room. So the tool uses information such as working space dimensions and speaker models to calculate the ideal layout for your space. I'm on our professional support site right now, where we can go ahead and download version 6.2. When you first open the Excel file, you will agree to the macros. The DART runs on complex macros, so this is a small but essential step, and it will just pop up as a little notification. And then go ahead and accept the end user license agreement. Now we start off in the Room Information tab, where we can select from 3 modes of operation. Post and Music Default is suitable for studios mixing non-theatrical post-production content, music, gaming, or podcasting. Post Advanced adds on to Post and Music Default using several additional tabs that can aid in the room design and commissioning process. And then Music Advanced mode builds on the Post Advanced mode and overlays the reference level recommendations for Dolby Atmos music studios. Since Music Advanced will display all available features, I will go ahead and use that for this example. Now we are brought to the Design Creation tab, where we can define our units of measurement as well as our working space dimensions. When defining mix position, you want to make sure that you are very accurate because all of the speaker positions that the DART is going to generate are going to be based around this defined mix position. For more information about defining your working space dimensions and mix position, I would definitely recommend checking out our How to Design a Dolby Atmos Mix Room document. So as always, of course, we have the ability to select our speaker make and model for each speaker position. In order to reduce the length of choices in that drop-down cell, we have also added this handy manufacturer filtering dropdown at the top. This means if I already know I want to use Atom speakers, I can go ahead and eliminate all other manufacturers from the dropdown and only view models from that brand. Coming over to the left in our speaker position section, again, as always, you have the option to manually enter the speaker positions rather than using the default angles and coordinates. So you can either update the XYZ cells and type right in here, or switch to angle entry and update the angles directly. If you're going to update the angles, just be mindful of the recommended tolerances. You can view these in the help guides. And if you go outside of the recommended angular tolerance, the box will turn red and an error message will appear at the bottom. If you update the XYZ coordinates, the angles will automatically update and vice versa. You can check distance from the mix position to each speaker by hovering over the speaker location name. If your goal is to place all speakers at equal distance from the mix position, this can be a helpful feature. You can also check and visualize the delay over to the right here in the delay column will show you the delay value needed to achieve the effect of having all speakers at equal distance. Coming back to that error message I mentioned, we now have a dedicated design feedback section at the bottom, which replaces the hover over feedback messages. The messages themselves have been divided into 4 categories. We have design geometry. This is going to relate to the size of the room, distances between speakers, and the placement of the mix position with regards to the standard room design recommendations. Speaker positions. This relates to the position of the speakers with regard to the standard room design recommendations. And then speaker performance relates to the output of the speakers relative to the recommended target levels for the room. If you're using passive speakers, you will also see a similar section here that says amplifier performance. That's related to the output of the amplifiers relative to the recommended target levels for the room. And then, of course, we have the all option to show all of the message categories. Since we're using an advanced mode, we have the option to check additional tabs at the bottom. If I can grip the checkbox. Perfect. Let's first head over to our room commissioning tab, where we've added a new delay calculator function. This function allows the user to enter measured propagation time or distance from each speaker to the mix position, and then the tool determines the incremental propagation delay between each speaker and the mix position relative to the furthest speaker. If a speaker is part of a pair such as left wide and right wide, the average relative figure is also then shown. If you're involved in the room calibration process or are interested in what these figures look like in your room, then this may be a really useful tool for you. To demonstrate the extra equipment entry tab as well as the error messages, I will just go in here and add my own speaker model. Let's call them underpowered speakers. It's very self-explanatory. And we'll give them a maximum peak SPL of 85 dBc free field. Now let's hop back to the design creation tab. I will turn off the manufacturer filtering and let's fill the room with my underpowered speakers. Now we see that there are quite a few error messages indicating that we should strongly reconsider our choice of speaker and that the model we've chosen is not suitable for our monitoring level, which is 85 dB. Obviously, if we're monitoring here at 85 dB and using a speaker that maxes out at 85 dB at 1 meter, that gives us no headroom and will result in some significant distortion when we consider the practical dynamic range of the content, as well as the inverse square law, which the DART uses to calculate attenuation over distance. You can also click on the monitoring level cell up here, which will change the value to the maximum monitoring level that's available with your selected equipment. Obviously, these fake speakers here, there's really no good monitoring level, but that can be a useful feature. I also wanted to flag a favorite feature of many introduced in version 6.0 of the DART, which is our Design Printout tab. This is a very easy way to visualize the speaker locations, and you can go ahead and print this out and have it handy during installation. You may, of course, choose to do some more detailed drawings to show room impediments, consoles, speaker brackets, etc., but even so, this can be a nice starting point, and it will also list out the number of speakers and amplifiers if that's applicable below. Okay, so those are the primary features that I wanted to highlight. If you are interested in exploring version 6.2 of the Dolby Atmos Room Design tool, it's available to download for free at professionalsupport.dolby.com. And on that same site, you will find in-depth tutorials, our mixed room design documentation, and a dedicated forum for questions on room design and calibration.
Those are great updates, Emma. Thank you so much for sharing that. And another new resource for rooms really on a global level is the Dolby Certified Service Partner Program, right? Which is designed to really create trusted partnerships between Dolby and key pro audio integrators, which will help to assist in design and integration and commissioning of Dolby Atmos mix studios. Can you share a little bit about that program?
Yeah, absolutely, Ben. So the Dolby Atmos Certified Service Partner Program is designed to create these trusted partnerships between Dolby and then key pro audio integrators. So the Certified Service Partners, or CSPs for short, are companies that design, install, integrate, commission, and then continue to support Dolby Atmos studios. And our goal is really to educate and empower them with the latest tools and information through in-depth training on all of those topics that I just mentioned. We're really excited to be joined shortly by our friends at GC Pro, who are a new addition to the program. And if you're looking for a list of our certified service partners, you can find that on professional.dolby.com. You have the ability there to filter by city and by country, so you can locate a partner in your area. It is a global program. And then shortly on that site, you will also be able to find a list of Dolby Atmos specialists. So these are trained individuals that can provide room calibration and room tuning related services. They've been trained directly by the expert calibration engineers at Dolby. And so you're in really fantastic hands seeking services from those specialists.
That's awesome. There have also been some great updates made to the studio's directory page and a process now for new studios. Can you share a little bit about that process and maybe also clarify for folks a question that we get frequently, which is around certification of rooms, because it's not something that Dolby does today, right, to certify mixed rooms. But can you share a bit about the studio's directory updates and the process for new studios?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's correct. We do not certify Dolby Atmos music or home entertainment studios. We don't approve music studios, but we do provide the Dolby Atmos Music Studio directory on professional.dolby.com to assist potential clients with finding a suitable studio in their area. So the studios in that directory have followed our recommendations and guidelines and then provided documentation to indicate that their system meets those minimum recommendations and guidelines. We recently published a short knowledge base article on professional.dolby.com in our music and post knowledge base that details the specific process for applying to be listed in that directory, as well as the guidelines for being included. So in that article, you'll find things like minimum layout dimensions, minimum headroom monitoring level, as well as the list of kind of documentation needed to apply for that directory. The documentation we're looking for is pretty simple. We're looking for things like a completed Dolby Atmos Room Design Tool or DARDT file, information about the audio interface, photos of the installed system, and then details about kind of who calibrated and what method they used. The knowledge base article is not necessarily a comprehensive list of considerations for designing Dolby Atmos music rooms. We still recommend referring to the various pieces of documentation, such as the How to Design a Dolby Atmos Mixed Room Guide, the in-depth DART and mixed room design tutorial, and then the other resources that are available on our professional support site, or of course, contacting a Dolby Atmos certified service partner for assistance. I also wanted to mention that we do not have an equivalent process for non-theatrical post-production rooms. This is currently only for music studios. However, if your facility is interested in Dolby Atmos theatrical mixed room certification, which is our only remaining certification program, you can find more information about that on our content services webpage, which is going to be linked at the bottom of that knowledge base article.
We'll go ahead and put up a QR code on the screen now that will take you to the knowledge base article that Emma mentioned. And we'll also put up a QR code of the studio's directory itself. I also wanted to make a quick point that we're also asked frequently if Dolby actually certifies mix engineers, and the answer is no, we don't. However, there are programs out there in the world, fantastic programs such as Derek Ali's Engineers course, Avid certification, and programs such as the Abbey Road Institute program, where you can certainly earn a certification if you so desire. So definitely check out those resources. All right, let's now get into Greg Stryke Chin's mix tip series, as he always shares with us here on the community sessions. This time, sharing his best practices for setting and importantly, saving your room settings in the Dolby Atmos render and some iLok tips. Greg, take it away.
Thank you so much, Ben. I hope everyone's doing well. Today, wanted to just kind of jump into doing some things with the Dolby Atmos renderer that, obviously it's a workhorse. It's the thing that kind of centralizes what we're able to do in Atmos, handling our beds, objects. It is the workhorse for all things having to do with Atmos, and a very creative tool at that. But one of the things that I just wanted to make sure I highlight, and I'll probably do this over the course of the next couple of community sessions, is just give a little bit of a high-level walkthrough of some of the other things that the Dolby Atmos renderer can do. So today what I wanted to do is kind of cover a little bit around room setup. So obviously when you have a fully calibrated, tuned room, Dolby Atmos room, studio, probably a CSP or someone, someone you've worked with, a room designer has come in after, set everything up, and then they've tuned the room, meaning that they've set up some microphones and done some capture with some tone and make sure that everything is perfectly aligned, that all the audio is getting to you at the right, time, everything's time aligned. And all of that is normally, that has to be saved into some sort of a profile. Now, typically that is saved on an audio interface or a monitor controller. So there's some great ones out there. Certainly, Avid Matrix Studio. There's DAD, JBL, and Tonado. Grace has a really nice monitor system, and there are many others. Certainly, there have been some newer things coming to market. The company Audient out of the UK has their new Auria interface, which also handles all of that management and saves that profile directly onto the audio interface. But what happens if you are working, maybe you're on a really tight budget, your interface doesn't have that functionality, or your monitor control, or maybe your monitor control is in your audio interface, doesn't have that. That's okay. We've got you covered. So the Dolby Atmos renderer actually can do some of that for you. That way you've got the best possible usage happening in your room. So I've got the renderer up here, and I'm just going to give a quick little tour and a quick little walkthrough of what can be done. And I'll just cover one section of it today. So here we are looking at the renderer. Again, we're in the latest version of the renderer, version 5.3. And if I just go ahead and go over here to setup and click room setup, you'll see that we get to this page, this window, this graphic GUI pops up. And we've got a couple of things going on here. So today we're going to kind of focus specifically on the room section, but there are two other sections. So then we've got headphone routing, and then we've got re-renders. Now, we'll cover that later. Just wanted to acknowledge that they're there. But today we're going to focus specifically on room setup. So there are 4 different tabs and then a radio button here. I'll just quickly cover the radio button, which is the array mode. That is a button that you'll use if you have a speaker system that is connected as an array. Most folks at home or in studios are not using an array mode, but so we won't cover that here. But that's exactly what that button is. So if we go through the tabs here, I'll just kind of quickly step through them. You can see here that right now we're just in the speaker layout mode, and you can see here that I've got some color coordination going on here. This is basically set up as a 714. So I've got my left, center, right. LFE is purple. We've got our left side, right side, our rears that are orange. And then my overheads, my .4, my 4 overheads are here in light blue, right? Everything that's grayed out is not what's active, or I don't have that present in the room. So that makes it really simple. Now, of course, if you needed to make some changes, you can absolutely do that. So we'll go ahead and go over to the next tab, which is routing. Now, routing is important because this basically assigns the channels for what those each one of those speakers is going to be accepting from the audio interface. So you can see here I've got my basically the default 714 layout. Left speaker is channel 1, right speaker channel 2. Center is channel 3, LFE is 4, so forth and so on. Now, some of you may be working in other formats, maybe film, where they might require that some of the channels are kind of reversed. And you can actually do that right here by going and clicking on any one of these speakers and just renumbering, just re-enumerating, depending on what the format is. Now, of course, you want to make sure you go ahead, once you accept that, when you're in your DAW and have the renderer connected, you just want to make sure that you can pull that configuration, or make sure if your DAW doesn't support pull, that you actually make sure that you're using the right format. And you can do that by sending tone, assigning objects to those outputs, and you can check that very quickly. Very, very simple. The next one is speaker delay. Now, speaker delay is really important, and really glad that the renderer has it. You're able to save it here should your interface not, again, be able, or monitor control be able to save your profile or that information from the tuning. The reason why speaker delay is important is depending on where your speakers are in the room, in a physical space, things are going to go out, hit the air, and going to arrive to your ears in your listening position at different times. That's just the nature of, a larger diaphragm woofer, or, a small tweeter, or LFE, whatever it might be. So what you want to do is make sure when the room is tuned, one of the things that will be calibrated is understanding the timing for that, for when everything's going to be hitting your ears. And we basically enter that information into the speaker delay area to make sure that everything actually hits you at the same time. The reason for that is that then creates a much better environment for your mixing, for your creation. When things aren't time aligned, again, things are hitting you at different times as they're coming out of the speakers and hitting the air. And then what happens is, they might feel pretty good, but once things are actually time aligned, it actually feels more like, your objects as they travel throughout the space actually feels more immersive, more real. It doesn't feel like it's specifically just going from one speaker to another. In the case of if you've got automation for an object that's traveling around the space. So here in the speaker delay section of the renderer, you can actually enter your delay amounts. Now, in the renderer, it's whole. These are expressed in whole milliseconds. Now, in your monitor control or audio interface, if you have the ability to store it there, that's going to be a lot more accurate, a lot more precise, because the increments are a lot smaller. But again, in a pinch, it's really great to have it here in the renderer. Once you enter all those changes, you go ahead and click accept, and it'll store it in the renderer, and it'll just recall it every time you launch the renderer. Next up is going to be monitoring. Now, I've got the renderer in default mode and all the normal preferences and the way it, just when you first install it. So you can see here that we've got a few different layouts that are already there: 714, 715120. Right now, you can see here, again, in my room is not actually outfitted for Atmos yet. We're going to actually do that at some point where we go through the whole journey and you can see all of my whatever happens. But you can see here that right now I'm just using my left, right. I have a center channel on, that should be off, and then LFE. Now, if you wanted to add a layout, you can actually do that here as well. And it's very simple. And this is really to help you when you're listening to re-renders or listening to things in other formats, that you can actually play things back and listen correctly. So we're going to go ahead and add a layout. And you can see I just click add layout, new layout 01. Of course, I can go ahead and rename that. I won't do that yet, but let's go ahead and create, let's say, a 512. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the tops. I'll turn off the sides. Let's just say we actually wanted to do a 2.1. So left, right, LFE, and then I can just go ahead and call this 2.1 and click accept. And Bob, as they say, is your proverbial uncle. So that's a really quick run through of room setup in the Dolby Atmos renderer. Again, really nice that it's there. The renderer being, like I said, the workhorse it is. It's nice to have that availability. If you're just getting started, maybe you don't have a room, totally set up with multiple speakers yet, and it's a great way to be able to kind of manage some of that stuff if your interface or monitor control doesn't have that. So we're going to leave the renderer now, and we're going to go into the iLok license manager. If you are leveraging the Dolby Atmos renderer and using it attaching it to your DAW. So you're not using internal rendering, but you're actually using the Dolby Atmos renderer. When you purchase it or procure it, there's a code that's assigned to your account, your iLok account. It's placed in the account. If you have an iLok, a physical iLok, which is just a physical little dongle, that a USB dongle that you plug into your computer, and when you launch an application that leverages that copy protection, it looks for the authorization on that key, or it might look for it on your computer. So that's what I wanted to clear up. Obviously, if you're not in Pro Tools, you're using another DAW that doesn't use iLok, and you don't have a physical iLok, chances are you've actually got that license activated on your computer. But what happens if you need to, maybe you've got it on an iLok, you need to use it somewhere else, and you need to move move the activation around a little bit. You can actually do that. So I'm quickly just going to go ahead, and we're here in my iLok License Manager, and you can see right here on the left-hand side, I've got my iLok plugged in. I've got a USB-C iLok, and then I've got my computer here. I've got a couple of activations here on my computer. I've got Pro Tools Intro, the album assembler, and the renderer. Now, if I look, we're going to focus on the renderer specifically. You can see here that I actually have a valid authorization on an iLok and on the computer. If I wanted to move the activation that I have on my computer, let's say I needed to put it on an iLok because I need to jump on a plane, head over to Ben and work with Ben over in LA, it's very simple. All I need to do is launch the iLok License Manager. I'm going to make sure that I'm in my activation, the activation I want to deactivate. In this case, it's the one on my computer. So I've got my computer selected, and I'm going to go to that license on the right-hand side, and I'm simply just going to right-click on that license, and I'm going to say deactivate. Now, don't worry. Don't be afraid. It's not going to remove the license. It is going to remove it from the computer, but what it's going to do, it's going to deactivate it and put it right back into my available pool of licenses. Okay, very important. This is where folks get really scared, because as you can see now, I've deactivated it and it's no longer listed in my active licenses on my computer. That's okay. All I need to do is just go here to my username, and I just click up here on available licenses. And of course, now I've got like 18,000 licenses. So now I've got my licenses right back here in my available pool of licenses. I can quickly just right click on it, activate it, and then it'll ask me where I want to activate it, or I can go ahead and activate it right back to my computer. So here we go. It's going to actually ask me where I want to activate the license. I have the option of this computer or on my iLok. Now, since I need it, I'm just going to go ahead and activate it right back to my computer. And Bob, again, is your proverbial uncle, and you're done, and you're ready to go. And with that, we're going to cover more over the next couple of community sessions, but I wanted to share that one because that's one I've been seeing in the field. I hope you guys are having a great time creating, mixing, and doing all kinds of fun stuff in Dolby Atmos. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Ben.
Thank you, Greg. And you're always welcome in my spaceship. So come on over and let's authorize some licenses and get going. It's always a trip too, to look back at like your previous licenses, right? And like you've got 18,000 of them. I have not quite that many, but it's always a trip to go back and like see the dates and like think about when you were authorizing that license and whatever project you were working on and whatever you were doing. So it's a bit of a time capsule as well.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. All right, I'd like to now welcome on Guitar Center Professionals, design engineer Marcin Nowak and account manager Doug Battle. Thanks for doing this, guys. Great to see you. Can you share a little intro about your roles at GC Pro and with Dolby Atmos systems?
Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you for having us. So yeah, I'm the system design engineer, studio design engineer for GC Pro based in Los Angeles, California. Majority of my work is in this area, but we serve clients nationwide. My primary role is consultation, design, and commissioning of systems. So either all three of those or any one, depending on the client and need. Typically, the DART is a key tool in my consultation phase before we enter design, hence it's kind of the starting point for any discussion about an Atmos room with any client.
Yeah, my name's Doug Battle. I'm an account manager here in Los Angeles, essentially meaning that I work with clients who are interested in building out a system. So in this case, a Dolby Atmos system. I work as an immersive engineer as well. So I come from that background. And I think the thread that ties my roles together is helping people bring their vision to life, whether it's as a mixer. Someone comes in with what they want sonically and in an Atmos setting, what they want to achieve, or bringing in a client who has a vision for what they want to do with a room. And so the DART is foundational for both of those. Of course, ensuring quality in the rooms that I work in, but also when a client comes to me who's interested in a room, it's really the first place we start, looking at their room, determining what the best products are going to be to achieve what they want to achieve, and collaborating through the DART to ensure the highest quality that meets Dolby's caliber of excellence. So, invaluable tool for me as well.
So if someone's looking to reach out to you guys to kind of get the process going, can you share a little bit about how they can find you and, what things you're looking for? I think you touched on it a little bit to kind of get that process started, and then kind of how you specifically use the DART to start to lay out rooms for folks, and any rooms that you've done around LA that stand out for you.
So we have nationwide account managers, and on gcpro.com, there's a listing of local account managers. So if you're not currently working with an account manager, you can always reference gcpro.com for geographic location of the one closest to you. And from there, typically the flow is that the account manager reaches out to me. We get an email thread going, and we start with a conversation. We get on a Zoom call where we figure out kind of the general purpose, the really broad stroke stuff, like what they're doing, whether it's music or post-production work, what format they want to work in, speaker count and channel count wise, equipment they already exist, because we're always trying to maximize the investment for the client and put the money towards the things that are going to make the most substantial difference, right? And then from there, we ask kind of the detailed questions about the room itself. The first thing that I always request is pictures from every possible angle, every detail, just to kind of get a visual representation of what the space is, if there's any obstacles to consider in the design, and so on. And then the next thing is dimensions. A plan set is usually ideal, but even if a plan set's not available, measurements with a measuring tape or laser are totally fine to kind of get some data to input into the DART and get a reference point.
Yeah, and on my end, I think that in any of the account managers, budget is certainly a consideration that comes into play pretty early on. And one of the great things about Dolby Atmos is it's a scalable format. And I think initially early on, a lot of people thought that there was a certain price point that was unachievable to be able to work in the format. And that's certainly changed, or the perception certainly changed. And part of my role is to help people understand what's possible given what they have to work with, and to work with in collaboration with Marcin, and then using the DART as well to figure out within their resources, how can we best achieve, the best possible Atmos environment.
So actually, I've got one for you, Doug. You mentioned earlier that you're also working as a Dolby Atmos engineer. So you're very familiar with working in the format, working and doing mixing and creating in Dolby Atmos. How does that come into play? Do you bring that into play? Certainly when you're talking to potential or actual customers when they're building out their rooms. How do you use that in kind of helping your customers?
And speaking on behalf of the account managers at GC Pro, I'm not the only one that's working in the format. We've got a number even here in Los Angeles who are working on a daily basis in Dolby Atmos. And it certainly comes into play, being able to understand not just products and, as a salesperson of trying to sell a product, but understand I've been in different rooms. I understand, and I understand the systems as well. And so understanding what it really takes to achieve what the client is expressing they want to achieve, and factoring in, have you considered this? And I've worked in this environment where, this was an issue, or this was something that was a huge benefit. So those experiences are invaluable. And again, not just for me, but for many of my colleagues as well.
Gentlemen, you're sitting in your new Dolby Atmos creation studio, if you will, in Hollywood, which is in the build process now. This is kind of a first of its kind room for GC Pro, if you will, where you're going to do a number of activities, including a grand opening event coming up in August. Can you share a little bit about the room and what it's going to feature and how it'll be used?
It's an interesting room because it's not a huge room, but it's not a small room either. It represents a good segment of what clients approach me with. You know, they have a room, they want to get into Atmos. They want a very focused system. They may already have equipment. And the room is essentially a representation of that. All the products that we continually rely on for specifying for our clients, put in a nice accessible presentation space in our Hollywood flagship store. And you know, just looking forward to doing events, having fun, getting people excited, engaged, and kind of just, you know, make it really approachable and answer questions and get more people into the format.
Yeah, and to piggyback on what Marcin said in the topic of conversation earlier, you know, we anticipate having all kinds of clientele in here, whether it's someone dipping their toes in Atmos for the first time and educating them on the format and what's possible through some of the resources you all provide, and also through the expertise of members of our team, but also people who are longtime, you know, mixers, producers, artists who are either upgrading their system or looking to build out an Atmos room for the first time. And so showing the range of what's possible, and a lot of our selection and the gear that we're using is indicative of the fact that we want to show the scalability of it, show what's possible at home in a home studio or an extra room or someone's bedroom, but also show what's possible in a commercial build out. And so again, this room is really meant to be a resource, not only for Guitar Center, but also for Dolby, and you know, presenting what's possible with the format, and you know, and looping in the local Los Angeles community to you know, to enable them to begin creating or to continue creating. And to the point of making this something that showcases the accessibility of Atmos, I think the Guitar Center company was very intentional about locating this inside the flagship store in Hollywood. We have glass on the walls. We're in here right now, and it's something that I remember growing up, going to the Guitar Center and putting on the CDJs, like bringing in my CDs and aspiring, and then seeing like the studio room next door and being in school and drawing out pictures of what I wanted to be my home studio one day, and always having that aspirational element from being in the store and the store experience. And I think at this point, the immersive studio is what a lot of people are going to be aspiring to. And while they're shopping and looking in and seeing whether it's content being made in here or playbacks that are happening, or high profile clientele who are spending time in here and who are making decisions about their purchasing, you know, it's something to aspire to and something to inspire the clients and customers of Guitar Center at the store. And so, you know, I think that at the stores where, obviously this isn't at every store, at least right now, you know, maybe one day, but, you know, at other stores, I think that if someone were interested in connecting with a GC Pro account manager, you know, some stores have account managers there, but many of the Guitar Center stores do not. But the personnel there are going to be equipped to point them in the right direction and connect them with the right person. So, you know, if it were someone in my area, presumably it would be me, and they have a form that they fill out for qualified customers and putting them in touch with us. So whether it's at this store or not, you know, GC Pro is an option across the country. I want to be clear about that. But here at the Hollywood store, we certainly have an opportunity to showcase what we do, because this is a room that we're building right now. We're working on it today. We put in acoustics yesterday. We're installing speakers. This is what we do at GC Pro. We work on installations. We work on, you know, professional musicians, professional audio, video, and lighting setups. And so it's an opportunity to showcase what we do and to begin that conversation. The stores should be equipped to direct a qualified customer to GC Pro account manager. And of course, we have account managers in different regions. Not every store in the country is going to have an account manager that works directly out of that store. But regionally, we're pretty well covered. And so, they should be informed on how to direct someone to us, to the appropriate account manager.
That's very cool. Love that. And congratulations on that. It will certainly be a destination, and certainly looking forward to checking it out and being a part of it. So thank you for sharing all of that. Thank you to everyone here for sharing all of this amazing information. Marcin, Doug, Emma, and Greg are here to answer your questions. So with that, please drop them into the questions function and we will answer them now. All right. Happy to welcome all of our guests back for Q&A. Thank you, everybody. That was great. Thank you, everyone, for the great questions that have come in during the session. Many we have answered directly back to you. Thank you for the pre-submitted questions as well. Starting off, we have a question from a participant named Marcin, not for our friend Marcin here from GC Pro, but the question is, with over 20 years of experience as a performing musician, multi-style, effective keyboardist, and sideman, what learning roadmap would you suggest to be the best in 2024 if I wish to develop my career as a software or hardware tester and wish to join the Dolby team to deploy all my previous experience in music production and live performance? Wow, great question. Marcin, I would encourage you to explore dolby.com/careers, where you can see job opportunities posted by skill set, category, region. Of course, Dolby's a global organization. And I see, Marcin, that it looks like you're based in Poland. So have a look at dolby.com/careers, and there is a Dolby office in Poland as well. So hopefully there's something there that fits for you. Next question, Emma, for you. This is from Gerard, and I'm going to combine this with a question from Yun as well. What are the minimum room dimensions needed, and is it possible to create a monitoring environment in a room that is smaller than the recommended size by Dolby?
Yeah, good question. So we don't have hard and fast specifications for room dimensions. We're really more concerned about the distances between speakers, ensuring that ideal separation. We do strongly recommend that the speaker layout length is at least the minimum recommended dimension. So that is 3.5 meters long or 11.5 feet. That's the distance from the center speaker to the center line of the rear surrounds. 3 meters or about 10 feet wide. That's the distance between the side surround speaker baffles, and then 8 feet high. So that's the distance from the floor to the overhead speaker acoustic center. And it's absolutely possible to create a great mixed environment slightly below those dimensions with proper angling and speaker placement. But as a rule of thumb, we are kind of aiming for those minimum speaker layout dimensions defined in our best practices and our mixed room design guidelines. I'm not sure, Doug and Marcin, from your kind of perspective and experience in the field, are there any specific considerations that you approach for small rooms or rooms that might be close to those minimum dimensions?
Thanks, Emma. No, typically I just, I very much rely on the DART in order to estimate what will work in the room specifically. And then the second thing is what the budget and, spatial restrictions of the space and possibilities of where to mount speakers and the type of speakers that are applicable to the client's purpose, first and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good point too about the type of speakers, because you don't want to use speakers that are 15 inches deep when you only have so much width to work with. You're really losing a lot of your layout space there. So yeah, definitely important. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you. Again, for you, Emma, from Bernard, what are the SPL requirements when monitoring in a near field environment? Does it need to be 110 dB?
No. So in a smaller room or a very near field environment, you likely won't be monitoring at 85 dB, assuming that's what 110 means, kind of that 85 plus 20 dB of headroom or 80 plus 20 dB of headroom. You can drop down to 79 or 82 dB, depending on what is appropriate for the type of content that you're actually mixing. So just keep in mind, you're still aiming for 20 dB of headroom, regardless of what your monitoring level is, whether it's 79, 82, or 85 dB. And that is at the mix position. So the best way that you're going to determine that is by using the DART, of course, because it takes into account inverse square law and that attenuation over distance. And that's how you're going to get a pretty accurate read on what you're going to be hearing at the mix position.
Great, thank you. A question from Douglas about his studio setup. Emma, in his home studio, he has JBL 708P for his LCR, a Blue Sky 15-inch sub, and Genelec 8020s. He has a Matrix studio, and the system's working well, but he would like to upgrade and configure to go from 712 to 914. So he'll need to purchase 4 more speakers. Should he purchase 4 more 8020s, or maybe the left and right wide speakers should be JBL 705s to match the fronts? Any thoughts on that configuration?
Yeah, typically the same model will be used for the wides as is used for the rest of the surround. So it sounds like in this case, that would be the Genelec 8020s, I think you said. If you do decide you prefer to match the wides to left, right, center, I might go with the 708 JBLs rather than kind of introducing another model into the mix, even though it is from the same manufacturer. Really keeping things matched and consistent in terms of color and frequency response will just help you do less in the calibration process, and that's the goal.
Great, thank you. Question about ceiling height from Richard. Emma, if the ceiling is too low, would additional delay be acceptable to compensate?
Yeah, so if you're limited to a room with a low ceiling, you can certainly make adjustments in that calibration process to compensate for that. I would say the fewer design concessions you can make, or you have to make, the better. Following the design guidelines is always important, but really becomes especially key in those small rooms. So you want everything properly separated and angled correctly at your mix position. Another thing I just want to mention with that is with a low ceiling, it's important to pay really close attention to overhead speaker placement and making sure that that square that you're creating above the mix position is accurate and that you're accurately following the DART. When the ceiling gets lower, the overhead image and that overhead square gets a bit narrower. And so it's pretty common to see a really low ceiling and then folks maybe have placed their overhead speakers very wide or toward the corners of the room. But as the ceiling gets lower, that square does get smaller. And so you want to make sure that you're really following that as closely as possible when the ceiling's low.
That's great. Thank you. Question here from George, and I'll throw this one to you, Greg, and hopefully, George, we're answering your question correctly here. But the question is, how do you get the session to sound like stereo play? That is the entirety of the question, Greg. Kind of a interesting one there for you, but I'm sure you can address it.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Ben. So I think if I understand the question correctly, it sounds to me like you're asking how do you kind of get your stereo or your Atmos mix to kind of match your maybe a stereo mix that's been mixed previously. So I'll answer it a couple of different ways. The first thing I'll mention is we actually now have the ability to have a stereo direct, a stereo 2.0 separate render out of the Dolby Atmos renderer. So one of the things you can do is if you're working in Atmos, if you're working in an Atmos mix, you can actually go ahead and just like we all do, we kind of do some test renders when you're rendering an ADM or a specific Dolby Atmos encapsulated render to test. You can also then do a stereo render, a separate render. It's not a fold down, which is what used to exist, but in version 5.3 of the renderer, you can now do an absolutely stereo direct render. So that's one way that you can quickly kind of go back and forth. Again, that's if you're working on a project that's you've been working on that mix in Dolby Atmos, so you can again derive that stereo mix there and test it. If you're working on something where the stereo file or the stereo has already been delivered, that's already something that exists. One of the things you can do is just make sure that when you're working in Dolby Atmos, a lot of people think you don't have the same techniques and things that were available to you working in stereo. You actually do. Now you do have to manage that a little bit differently. Of course, there's many videos kind of talking through that. You can check our YouTube page for some previous community sessions that kind of cover that. But things like mix bus processing, you can actually still use that and use your favorite plugins. Most of that will still exist in the bed. That's not to say you can't use or leverage that for objects, but specifically for objects that are going to travel within the space. So they've got some automation where things are moving. You do want to just keep a little bit more extra air on that stuff if you're going to have that or those objects attached to bus processing. There's a lot of different ways to approach it, but the things that you've learned or kind of used to leveraging in stereo most of the time still exist and are available to you in Dolby Atmos.
Great, thank you, Greg. Great answer there. Question from Henny. This is about phase and time alignment, Emma. Does the new DART have a guide for phase and time alignment?
Yeah, so version 6.2 has that delay calculator function that I mentioned, as well as the standard RT60 measurements and room mode measurements that the previous versions had. So definitely try out that delay calculator and see if that kind of suits what you're looking for. And then if there's any questions, feel free to post them in that room design and calibration forum. I can drop the link to it again here in the chat, and we can definitely help you out.
Great. Thanks, Emma. One for Doug and Marcin. When is the Hollywood GC Pro grand opening, and when can I visit the Hollywood studio?
So our goal is late August, and once it opens up, we'll be taking appointments. It's that's the way it's going to be handled. It's going to be a one-on-one type of thing where you book an appointment. Doug, I, or other account manager will be there to demo the room and run it through its paces and address any questions or concerns right on the spot.
Cool.
Yes, I would plan on late August for having a private event late August, and if you want to keep up more closely, the GC Pro official Instagram page is probably a good place to start. I think that we're going to be posting more specifics on how to book an appointment and get together and get in that room on that page.
Cool. Thank you. One more for you, Emma, and then we will wrap here from Jesper. He's asking about using dual subs, what the best starting point is for that, and the best adjustment and moving plans in relation to how the DART operates.
Sure. Yeah, I assume by best starting point, you mean placement. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, though. So subwoofer placement is overall the most flexible placement in the Dolby Atmos system. I mean that in terms of the technical guidelines and the recommended angle tolerances, not in terms of room acoustics. Sometimes the room really does dictate a single place that your subwoofer will work, or subwoofers. We talked about this a bit as well in the community session with Focal's Joshua Essock and Gavin Haverstick, but experimentation is really your best friend when you're trying to find a good place for subs. Doug and Marcin, I don't know, being in the field often, facilitating different types of installations, have you found in terms of dual subwoofer placement, are there certain positions you generally like, or are you kind of adjusting based on the room every time?
Yeah, it's very much room dependent to your point, but I typically, the most common would be, aligned with the left and right speakers is kind of a common approach, especially if the room has traps in it. Then you're getting really good direct low end to the mix position, but handling kind of the buildup in the corners with the traps.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Before we wrap this session, I'd like to mention that in next month's session, we're going to be focusing on something that Greg mentioned a little bit earlier, and that is the Stereo Direct feature in the Dolby Atmos Renderer version 5.3, and also on creating original music in Dolby Atmos. So if you're using Stereo Direct, or you're working with low latency monitoring or recording in Atmos, either using the Dolby Renderer or your DAW's renderer, we'd love to hear from you. Please email us your thoughts and your feedback, your workflow at musicrelations@dolby.com. We'd love to hear from you on this, and we have an exciting session planned for next month around that topic and workflow. So with that, I'd like to thank Emma Brooks, Greg Chin, Marcin Nowak, and Doug Battle for joining this Music Community Sessions. We will see everybody next time. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.